Hi, my name is Lindsay Wallace, and I'm going to be going over concepts I covered in my research paper, which focuses on singing Redface and the misappropriation of the American Indian culture in American popular culture, which has led to a homogenized depiction of Native American culture. Our textbook defines singing Redface as when a non-native person takes on the racial archetype of a Native American character through song. So to understand Redface and get a better idea of where it came from and how it came about, I'm going to talk about its origins. Racial stereotypes are deeply rooted in American history and colonialism. From the first moment that Christopher Columbus reached the Americas, his logs and the letters he sent back to the Spaniards created this stereotype. Native Americans were never really appreciated or recognized for their culture. They were seen more as an economic means, exploitation. Basically, they just wanted them off the land once they got what they wanted, and that's why they were forcibly removed. It was a conquest of power. Its origins can also be related to blackface minstrelsy, which is a theatrical performance. It was popular during the Jacksonian era, which was from about the 1820s to Civil War period was when it was at its peak. White men would dress up in blackface and portray these African Americans in a way of mockery, and it was very dehumanizing, and today it's seen as incredibly offensive and obviously unacceptable. Racial antipathy was heavily prevalent in this, which is when racial stereotypes are used to present a racial group in a negative light, which can also be seen in Redface. Unfortunately, Redface is not as blatantly seen as unacceptable. It still gets away with a pass because it's a modern issue. It hasn't progressed as far as blackface has. Redface can be seen in playing Indian, which is when people put into motion their assumptions about what constitutes Indianness. This is seen especially around Halloween and Thanksgiving because of the costumes people can wear. They're extremely stereotypical outfits, normally consisting of what appears to be a buckhead skin outfit, whether it be for male or female, and some sort of feathered headpiece. A Tribe Called Red has actually made a point to call this out. They asked their audience members who are non-native to stop wearing Indian costumes to their performances because it's disrespectful and offensive. Costumes have contributed largely to cultural confusion. These costumes and movies people see from a young age form their ideas of what American Indians are like, and I think this is something that I personally was affected by. I'm from Texas, and I'm not sure how education teaches Native American history in Oklahoma, but what I can recall is learning about wars, the Trail of Tears, forcible removal, the Mayflower, and how that led to Thanksgiving. Luckily, I've been able to be a student at OU, and there's a lot offered about learning of Native American culture. I've taken Native American studies, and now I'm in this class, and it's really broadened my understanding of Native American culture. Hollywood has also played a large role in homogenizing the culture, especially in Western films. Native Americans have a rich and diverse culture that differentiates the hundreds of different tribes, which obviously the homogenizing of it, you don't hear about all of those tribes. Most films have simplified this down to one-dimensional portrayals of American Indians, and they're shown on two opposite sides of the spectrum. A really common one is being seen as an uncivilized savage, and another one involves a role that deals with idealized sympathy, which shows them as noble savages. It kind of gives off this imaginary sympathetic culture that kind of gives off the idea that Native Americans are extinct, which obviously they're not. Since the beginning of the film industry of depicting Native Americans, American Indians, they have been frustrated with the distortion of American culture and the way it has perpetuated the lingering effect of colonialism. I don't think I mentioned this in my research paper, but as early as 1926, organizations were made to protect Native American rights in the film industry and encourage authenticity. Now, that being almost 100 years ago of the first organization, it really shows how large of a problem this misappropriation is, and there's still all this work to be done when they've been trying to address it for almost a century. Two notable movies that I'd like to mention are Pocahontas and Peter Pan. Pocahontas glamorizes and romanticizes what really was an incredibly tragic story, and in Peter Pan, when he's getting initiated into the tribe that lives on Neverland, the Lost Boys are playing Indian, and there's so many racial stereotypes that take place in this scene. They even give Peter Pan an Indian tribal name. I can't remember what it's called, but these movies weren't made in the interest of telling the story of Native American culture, but rather for profitable entertainment. It's basically exploitation of their culture, just like in the colonial periods. And as I mentioned earlier, this fed the cultural confusion since they target such a young audience. It's growing up, that's what the first thing they're learning is about Indian culture. Also in Peter Pan, the members of the tribe sing What Makes the Red Man Red. They are telling their story, but it's offensive because, especially since the Indians themselves are the ones singing the stereotypical song. So it's like their own people, even though that's not an authentic representation, are telling and enforcing this racial stereotype. And also the music and the dancing and just the production of the whole scene in general is very exaggerated. Frank Wan was one of the artists who was featured in the Rebel music clip that we watched, and he actually calls this out. One of his rap songs is called What Makes a Red Man Red. It's not specifically directed at Peter Pan, but it does have to do with it. In some of the lyrics, he says, tell me what you know about thousands of nations. He's calling out how American culture has homogenized the depiction of a Native American, and that no one really knows anything about, or the average person doesn't know much about the hundreds of different tribes, or they might not even know that they're different. And he says, do you think the red man is dead? Referring to, idolized sympathy, the Native American coming off as, an extinct group of people. He says that he calls out the fake headdress on your head, the costumes. People are wearing these headdresses. He also specifically calls out Hollywood. He says Hollywood portrayed us wrong, and he is basically putting a large amount of blame on the misappropriation surrounding the Native American community. An example of singing Redface that is a little bit more recent is Tim McGraw, his song Indian Outlaw that came out in 1994. It's a perfect example of singing Redface. He is literally taking on the persona of an American Indian, and he word for word says, I'm half Cherokee, half Choctaw, which he's not. The lyrics of the song are all racial stereotypes, and unfortunately, this song actually climbed the charts. It was extremely popular, it had a catchy melody, so it was widely heard around America, especially in the South where country music was popular. So this contributed largely to, reinforcing and engraving the depiction of a homogenized Indian into the American culture. Although this was over 20 years ago, singing Redface is still prevalent today, but the indigenous community has made a lot of progress reclaiming their own culture. So hopefully in the decades to come, singing Redface can be as unacceptable and, known as blackface. And hopefully this can be accomplished through awareness and education of Native American culture from the start of a young age. Thank you.